Welcome to the Science of Hockey, the podcast where we break down the science behind ice hockey. I'm the analyst, your host, and every week we explore the data, research, and evidence that shape how we play, train, and understand the game of hockey. From biomechanics to performance psychology, we take you beyond the rink and into the research lab, giving you insights that go beyond hearsay and into what really makes the difference on the ice. Whether you're a player, a coach, a parent, or just someone passionate about the sport, we're here to bring you scientifically backed information in a language that's friendly and easy to understand. So grab your skates and let's dive into the science of hockey. Hello, hockey fans. This is the Science of Hockey, and I'm the analyst. Today, we're diving into a study on youth hockey helmets and concussions. From loose chin straps to missed fit criteria, learn how the right helmet fit can make all the difference for young players.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be talking about something that's super important, especially if you're a hockey player, or maybe the parent of one.
Absolutely.
Or really, even if you're just someone who's, interested in sports safety in general. We're tackling the question of, does how your helmet fits really affect your chances of getting a concussion?
Yeah, it's something that I think a lot of people just sort of assume they know the answer to.
Yeah, you would think, right.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like a pretty simple thing.
Right.
But we're actually going to dig into this. We're looking at a 2021 study from the Journal of Athletic Training, and they focus specifically on youth hockey players.
Interesting.
And they found some pretty surprising stuff right from the start. Like, it actually challenges a lot of the assumptions that we have about helmet safety.
Well, before we get into the actual study itself, I think it's important to kind of make sure we're all on the same page about what exactly a concussion is.
Yeah, good point.
So a concussion is basically a type of traumatic brain injury. And it happens when you have a sudden jolt or a blow to the head, and it disrupts the normal function of the brain.
Okay, so concussions are serious. We're not messing around here.
Definitely not.
So let's talk about this study. What did the researchers actually do? Like, how did they set this up?
So they took a group of young hockey players, all from Calgary, and they were between the ages of 11 and 17. And what they did was they actually compared three different groups of players.
Okay.
So the first group were players who had unfortunately had concussions.
Right.
The second group were players who had other injuries but not concussions. So maybe they had, a broken arm or a leg injury or something like that.
Got it.
And then the third group were players who hadn't been injured at all. They were just your, average, healthy hockey players.
Makes sense. So they're kind of trying to control for other factors there.
Yeah, exactly. They wanted to see, is there a specific link between helmet fit and concussions? Or is it just that, any injury could happen regardless of helmet fit?
So it's about finding patterns, right?
Oh, exactly.
They're looking for connections between those concussions and maybe how those helmets were fitting.
Exactly. And here's where the first surprise comes in. So they started by asking all the players to rate how well they thought their helmet fit.
Okay.
And I think you can probably guess what the results were.
Let me see. They probably all thought their helmets fit pretty well.
Pretty much. A whopping 93% of the players said that their helmets fit either excellent or good.
Okay, so most players are feeling pretty confident about their helmets.
You would assume so, right?
Right.
But here's where things get really interesting. So the researchers weren't just going to take the player's word for it.
Right.
They decided to actually evaluate the helmet fit themselves.
Interesting.
And they used specific established criteria for what's considered a proper helmet fit.
Okay, so there's like a real science to this. It's not just like, oh yeah, it feels good on my head.
Exactly. And when they did this evaluation, they found something pretty shocking. Only 27% of the players actually met all the criteria for a proper helmet fit.
Wow. That's a huge difference. So you're saying even though all these players thought their helmets were fitting well, most of them were actually not as protected as they thought they were.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important takeaway here.
Yeah. So what was the most common problem that the researchers were finding? Was it something like, really technical with the helmet itself?
I think you might be surprised to hear this. The most common fit issue was actually a loose chin strap.
Seriously, a loose chin strap? I mean, come on.
I know, right? You'd think that would be one of the easiest things to fix.
Yeah, you just tighten it up.
Exactly. But the study found that it was a much more widespread problem than you might think.
So does that mean a loose chin strap actually increases your risk of a concussion?
Well, that's what the researchers really wanted to find out.
Right.
And that's where we get into the findings of the study.
Okay, so what did they find? Was it like a clear, cut and dry answer like, loose chin strap, you're going to get a concussion?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Their findings were actually a bit mixed.
Okay.
They did find a possible link between poor helmet fit and a higher risk of concussion when they were comparing the concussed players to the players who hadn't had any injuries.
Okay.
But that link wasn't as strong when they compared the concussed players to the players who had other injuries.
So not exactly the straightforward answer we were hoping for.
Right. It shows just how complex concussion research can be. There are just so many factors that could be at play.
Yeah, you've got everything from like how the impact actually happened to, the individual player's like body and how they react to things.
Exactly. And it's not always a simple equation of like bad fit equals concussion.
Right. It's not that simple. So what do we take away from this? I mean, the results are mixed, but it seems like there's definitely something here.
I think one of the biggest takeaways is that we need more research.
Right.
This study is a really good starting point.
Yeah.
But it definitely raises more questions than it answers.
Right.
And we need larger studies with more participants to really confirm these initial findings and figure out, what are the most important aspects of helmet fit when it comes to preventing concussions.
So it's not the end of the story, it's just the beginning.
Exactly.
And speaking of more to the story, this study actually uncovered a few other really interesting things about helmets that I think are worth talking about.
Oh, yeah.
For example, they looked at the age of the players' helmets, and what they found was pretty surprising.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. So what did they find? What was the average age?
Well, they found that the average helmet was almost 3 years old.
3 years. Wow.
Yeah. Which, at first glance, you might be like, okay, well, that's not that old.
Right.
But when you think about how much wear and tear a hockey helmet goes through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 3 years of practices, games, maybe even a few tumbles in the locker room or on the ice.
Exactly.
That could really add up.
And what's even crazier is that they actually asked the players, how long have you been using this helmet? And the answers that they got back didn't always line up with the actual manufacturing date of the helmet.
Oh, wow. Huh. So they might not even realize how old their helmets are.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a little concerning.
It's kind of scary to think that you could be like walking around with a helmet that you think is fine, but it's actually, way past its prime.
Right, and it's not providing the protection that you think it is.
Exactly. And it's a good reminder that helmets, they're not indestructible, right?
No, not at all.
Like over time, those materials can degrade, and that's going to reduce their ability to actually absorb impact.
And on top of that, there are so many different brands and materials out there that are used in helmets. And so it's just another layer of, complexity to consider when you're thinking about helmet safety.
It really makes you think, right?
Yeah.
It's like anything else. Things wear out over time.
Exactly.
Especially when you're using them for something as, intense as hockey.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. You wouldn't keep driving a car if it had worn out tires or faulty brakes.
Yeah, no way.
You need to make sure your car is safe.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with your helmet. Like, you shouldn't be relying on something that's past its prime to protect your head.
It's such a good analogy. Like, your helmet is basically your brain's braking system.
I like that.
You got to make sure it's in top condition if you want it to actually work when you need it to.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And this whole conversation about, keeping things in top condition and helmet age, it made me think about how we approach helmet safety in general.
Interesting.
I feel like we often get kind of laser focused on the helmet itself, the physical helmet. But maybe we need to kind of broaden our perspective a little bit.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I think this study really highlighted the fact that helmet fit is just one piece of the puzzle when it comes to preventing concussions.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Don't get me wrong, helmet fit is extremely important.
Right.
But it's not the whole story.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee.
Exactly. Even if you have a perfectly fitting helmet, there's still a chance that you could get a concussion, especially in a sport like hockey.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a fast-paced sport. There's a lot of contact.
Exactly.
So if it's not just about helmet fit, what else should we be thinking about to make hockey safer? And, really any sport safer for players?
Well, I think it's about taking more of a holistic approach.
Okay.
So for starters, we need to think about the rules of the game.
Okay, the rules.
Rule changes that discourage dangerous play, like penalizing hits to the head, those can make a huge difference when it comes to player safety.
Right. So we're not just talking about equipment. We're talking about, how the game is actually played.
Exactly.
And how we can change that to make it safer.
Exactly. And beyond the rules themselves, I think it's also crucial to create a culture of safety in sports.
Okay, a culture of safety. I like that.
This means, teaching players from a young age proper techniques, emphasizing sportsmanship and respect for their opponents.
Right.
And making sure that coaches and parents are prioritizing safety over winning at all costs.
It sounds like we're talking about like a shift in mindset almost.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like moving away from that, shake it off, tough it out mentality.
I couldn't agree more. We need to move away from toughness and move towards smart play.
Yeah, I love that.
It's not about taking away the physicality or the intensity of the game. It's about playing with intelligence and respect for yourself and your opponents.
Yeah, and recognizing that, like, a concussion is not something to just brush off.
Exactly. It's a serious injury, and it can have long-term consequences.
That's right. We're talking about potential cognitive impairments, mood disorders, even an increased risk of certain neurological conditions later in life.
Yeah, it's not something to be taken lightly at all. And that's why these conversations, these deep dives, are so important.
Absolutely.
We need to be talking about this. We need to be educating players, coaches, and parents.
Yeah, give them the knowledge they need to make informed decisions about safety.
Exactly.
So we've covered, helmet fit, rule changes, creating this culture of safety. But I'm curious, what are some other factors that might be at play here, especially in a sport like hockey where, those high-speed collisions are so common?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's one that researchers are still really trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's like a never-ending puzzle. But it's really cool to know there's so much research going on behind the scenes, trying to make things safer for everyone.
It's a constantly evolving field, and that's what makes it so exciting to be a part of. But, as much as we always need more research, we can't just sit around and wait for all the answers before we start doing something right.
Right. We got to work with what we got.
Exactly. And I think we actually know enough right now to make a real difference in concussion prevention. So maybe it would be helpful to just recap some of the key takeaways from this deep dive.
Yeah, good idea.
What do you think is the most important thing we've learned?
I think the biggest thing for me is just realizing that helmet fit is a much bigger deal than I think a lot of us realize.
I agree. And it's not just about, buying an expensive helmet and assuming you're good to go.
Yeah, you got to make sure it actually fits properly.
Exactly. And a lot of players, like we talked about, they may be overestimating how well their helmet actually fits.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that we shouldn't just trust how it feels on our head. Like, get it checked out by someone who actually knows what they're doing.
Absolutely. Talk to your coach, your athletic trainer, someone who's familiar with helmet safety standards.
Exactly. And while you're at it, maybe check the manufacturing date on your helmet too.
Oh, yeah, good point. You might be surprised how old it actually is.
Exactly. And like we were saying before, an older helmet may not give you the same level of protection.
And don't forget those chin straps.
Oh, yeah, those sneaky little things.
A loose chin strap can totally mess up your helmet's effectiveness.
So make sure it's nice and snug every single time you put that helmet on.
Every single time. But even with a perfectly fitted helmet, we have to remember that it's just one part of a bigger picture.
Right. Right.
We talked about this, but it's worth repeating. We need to be thinking about the rules of the game, proper playing techniques, and really creating that culture where safety comes first no matter what.
Absolutely. It's got to be a team effort. Players, coaches, parents, everyone's got to be on board with this. And I love that idea of promoting like a smart play mentality instead of just glorifying toughness.
It's not about being tough. It's about being smart and understanding that protecting your brain is just as important, if not more important, than scoring goals or winning games.
And we as fans have a role to play too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We can support organizations and coaches that are really prioritizing safety, and we can encourage changes to the rules that help protect players.
Exactly.
It's about shifting the whole conversation, moving away from just praising toughness, and really focusing on responsible athleticism.
I love that. Responsible athleticism. And ultimately, that's what's going to benefit everyone, from the youngest players just starting out to those seasoned veterans who've been playing for years.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, I think this has been a really eye-opening deep dive, and I'm so glad we had the chance to talk about it.
Me too. Hopefully everyone listening has learned a few things that they can apply to their own experiences, whether they're playing sports, watching sports, or just, thinking about safety in general.
And remember, knowledge is power, right? The more we know about concussions, the better equipped we are to prevent them and keep ourselves and our loved ones safe.
Well said.
Yeah.
So until next time, folks, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, keep those helmets snug.
And we'll catch you on our next deep dive.
Thanks for tuning in to the Science of Hockey. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share it with your friends, teammates, or anyone who loves hockey as much as you do. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment to let us know what you liked, what you'd like to hear next, or any questions you have. Your feedback helps us make the show even better. Until next time, keep your skates sharp, your mind open, and keep chasing the science behind the game.